Right.
We have a show called Love Talk, and we have another one called Heart to Heart.
Yes.
And my wife's show is called Don Yayesh, which is the realm or universe of love. She has another show that's just called simply Esh, love.
Love.
So over the years, that has been the focus of our practice, is focusing on ever-expanding love. And we, as human beings, when we're in this frequency, in this form, there's various levels of love. There's the sort of parental love that a parent has, which is about as close to unconditional love as I think that humans experience. Then there's the brotherly love that we feel for our brothers and sisters and peers. Then there's what we call like erotic love, the eros, the love of another that involves sensuality and sexuality. And then there's agape love, this love of humanity. And so I really want to speak with you about the agape.
Yes.
And agape, what it stands for, and the agape love. I believe that many people are misguided, and they believe that their husband or wife should love them unconditionally. And I'm like, well, love is not necessarily unconditional in a marriage. There's things that they may continue to love you, but the marriage may be over. You know? So I'd like to speak to that, like, you know, for people who are concerned in their relationships. What can you tell us?
Well, you know, first of all, you broke down the four areas of love very well. In the Greek terminology, you had storge, which is the parental love, which is a sacrificial love. In other words, you would do anything for your kid, even perhaps give up your life if you had to. And then there's phileo, which is the brotherly love or the sisterly love, where you love people that you like, you know. And eros is the erotic, but it's also creativity. You have to have eros with agape together for creativity to emerge. And agape, the unconditional or unconditional love, is the highest form of love, where you love people that you don't even like, because you love them because they're a manifestation of the existence of life. So even if you don't like their behavior, you still love them because they're emanations of God. So a marriage is actually two conscious people coming together to grow together, to learn how to perfect their loving. So basically, it's an advanced seminar where people are living in close confines of each other every day, you know, sleeping together, eating together, whatever, you know, doing everything together. And in the process of doing that, what needs to be healed in another comes to the surface. We trigger each other. We bring out the best of each other, and sometimes we bring out the worst of each other based on the close confines. And that means we get to perfect our loving. So when someone's triggering us, instead of blaming the external person, the other person, we begin to ask, you know, why am I being triggered here? What is here that needs to be healed in my own life? So that person becomes my teacher. I become their teacher. And then ultimately, I learn how to be able to love that being unconditionally, all conditionally, and it's a growth into that. Now, what happens is we mature in our loving, and we're able to discover that we get to the point where we're able to love without an object. Just love, period. In the beginning, you need an object to love. I love you. I love her. I love him. But as we mature, we find that we love loving. And we find that we're able to carry this energy of loving even if there's no one around. But how do we get there? Through our relationships, through our friendships, through our acquaintanceships, through our marriages. It helps us perfect our loving. And of course, as you indicated, sometimes marriages end. You know, sometimes they end for many reasons. Sometimes when you get married, you're saying, I'm willing to swim in the deep water of life. The shallow end, you date. The shallow end, you may, you know, have different kind of encounters. You know, some people have serial encounters, you know what I mean? They don't want to have any kind of commitment. It's just, we're just going to have fun, you know. And so they stay within the shallow end. They're 3 feet.
Right.
And then
I tell people you should do that as much as you want until you're done with that.
Yeah, then you know.
There's a time when you're done with that.
Yeah, and then you start swimming in the deep water. The deep water brings a level of commitment. And that means even when it doesn't feel good, you still stay with it to learn your lessons. Now, as that happens, you can grow together and be together, or sometimes you discover that you've learned everything that you can learn in that relationship, It doesn't have to be nasty. You can just say, you know what? We can change what this relationship looks like. We don't have to be married anymore. It doesn't have to be death do us part.
Right.
We can be friends. We can be business associates.
And when they said death do us part, people used to live to 45.
Go back in those days, yeah. Now people are living to be 70, 80, and 90.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And so many people stayed, like my parents stayed together for 60 years, you know. Some people, you know, so we have to be able to discern the difference between someone who aren't exercising the strength to learn their lessons and other people who are just getting out just because it doesn't feel good anymore. Yeah. You see, and there's a difference between the two.
There's definitely a difference between
one person is not acting from their commitment. They're just, oh, I just don't feel good anymore. I'm going to find somebody else to make me feel good. That's immaturity.
No, and that's avoiding the lesson.
Right.
I think the one that leaves before the lesson is learned is destined to repeat it.
Oh, over and over.
And it usually doesn't get prettier.
No, it gets a little worse, gets more intense. Right. It doesn't get prettier unless you actually do your inner work. And then what happens is, as you mature in your loving and you love to love, now you're not waiting for the other person to love you before you love them. That's called, let's make a deal. That's bargaining.
Right.
You just love because you love loving. And as that individual is growing and love to become loving, now you have two conscious, mature beings that love to love.
Yes.
And that's a very blissful, very giving, very compassionate, very generous relationship. And people who really do their inner work end up bumping into that. And it has a transference effect in other relationships as well.
Exactly true. You know, I believe that people are, because we are vibrational beings and we're sending out signals all the time, that we attract to us those who are on our own vibrational scale or level in our same vibrational frequency. So if your love is a needy kind of love, I need you to love me so I can love you back, you will attract that kind of a person.
Right, a stalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a kind of gooey, needy kind of situation that quickly it's like eating too much sugar. You know what I mean?
Sugar's good, but
the first couple of bites, it's like, this is good, this is good. Oh, this isn't so good.
Yeah.
You know, so in that needy relationships, you end up smothering each other, and you overdose on the diabetic aspect of sugar.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's not until you actually raise your vibration, and like you said, loving.
Yes.
You know, it's not that you need someone to love you. You're simply loving because that's what there is.
Right.
And then you become very attractive to a person of that level who wants to grow. And I believe that together we can go deeper and higher than you could perhaps go on your own.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
that's a profound and beautiful point, because people who are doing it alone can definitely grow spiritually. You can sit in a cave and meditate and achieve certain states of enlightenment. But you have to come off of the mountaintop and go into the valley to see if it's really real. You've got to get to you got to get into the traffic of life. You got to get into relationship, and then you see, can you maintain that space of love and enlightenment and bliss while you're in partnership, while you're on the freeway in traffic, while you're at your place of employment having to deal with different kinds of people. And oftentimes people will come out of retreats, out of mountaintops, to discover they can't do that. So sometimes you do need the partnership of other people to actually embody those particular lessons, you see. So yeah, relationships are a vehicle, an instrument for enlightenment.
And I can verify that from my own experience. I was one of those people who pulled back from life for 7 years, really. I stayed in a very isolated group of people, only people who were doing the inner work that I was doing. We were strict vegetarians, and you know, we wouldn't even be around people that drank or smoked or anything like their vibration. When it was sort of a spiritual elitist thing. Right. I didn't realize it was like a spiritual snobbery or something, right? I didn't, but at the time that's where I was at, and I felt that felt like the right thing to do for me.
Right.
And then it was later when I would go into the city to be around people, I realized I really didn't like people. I didn't. You know, I would be in love when I was over there in the retreat, but when I would go into amongst the people, I was angry.
You had a judgment.
Very judgmental. You know, it was like, right? So I realized that for me, the next step was to actually go into life. I thought, what good does it do if I'm sitting here alone in love with humanity?
Right.
So what? It doesn't really make a huge difference.
No, it doesn't, because it's impossible to love humanity in general. You have to love humanity specifically. That means to love humanity in general is a concept, but you have to actually love the person that you're with, love the person that just cut in front of you on the freeway, love the person that's giving you groceries at the grocery store, loving the person that you are in partnership. You have to learn. That's a muscle. It's strengthened by being together in partnership. So just sitting in the mountaintop can actually give you certain states of consciousness, but you have to strengthen that muscle by being in relationship.
Take it down, take it into the valley.
You got to go into the valley. And so that was a clean insight, a beautiful insight, because you have to move from judgmentalism to compassion. So even though you may choose not to eat meat, you may choose not to drink, you may choose not to do drugs, you may choose not to do a lot of things, but walking through humanity, you have compassion on the people who haven't made that choice yet. You don't see them as evil, bad, negative people. You don't become elitist. You just have compassion. But you can't have that compassion. You can't exercise that compassionate muscle unless you're involved in life.
And it was a hard muscle for me to develop. Looking back, I see that was perfect. That's the way I had to evolve for myself. And
so it gave you some good discipline.
Yes, gave me good discipline. It gave me states of consciousness that I would not have achieved otherwise. I rather doubt, and are made of taken even more years. And then it gave me a strong desire to go into the world, and to make a difference, and to
see, now you're taking those skills, the lessons you've learned there, lessons you've learned, as you said earlier, taking classes here. Now you're meeting many people through your TV shows, and you're here spreading the news. You couldn't have done that sitting on top of the mountain.
We would have never predicted this.
So now you get to touch millions of people, giving them seeds of inspiration to make them grow and unfold.
I love how this is evolving. It's very organic. You know, many people are looking for a soulmate, and we've touched upon this a little bit. There's a belief that there is a particular soul out there that's your soul, that's your mate, that is the one, and that they're out there, and I'm going to find them. And when I find them, I'll be complete. Like I'm part of something bigger, and if I don't find them, I won't be complete. There's this background of thinking that I'm trying to articulate that that has people making choices because, well, they're not my soulmate, or I chose the wrong one. From my experience, I find that the one is the one you say it is. I believe that we have something to say about it. It's not just like we were talking about destiny or fate.
The thing about it is, when people are operating from the premise that I'm going to find this right person to complete me, that's an incorrect premise. Because the Spirit, when the Spirit recreated us in its own image and likeness, it didn't recreate us incomplete. We're complete beings. And what we're in search for are the insights that allow us to know that we're complete. So I'm not looking for a missing piece. I'm looking for a partner to play with that allows me to grow into my awareness that I'm complete. So on the level of soulmateism, there's different levels of soulmates. We have soul lessons, and we incarnate around individuals that vibrate a level to the lessons we're learning and the gifts we're to share. Those are our soulmates. We recognize them. We don't know why we gravitate towards certain people, why we like those. I know you. I recognize you. You know, and you have an affinity towards them, and that's a soulmate. And then there are individuals that there's a level of intimacy where you could be in a partnership, marriage, that type of thing. That's a soulmate. There are soulmates that trigger you, that you get into their presence, you don't feel good. You don't like them. You don't know why. But they're bringing something to you to have you examine, to have you look. So there's different levels of the soulmate. And then there are individuals that there's such an affinity, such a love, such a soul recognition, that you just feel a vibration of love, that, I want to be with this particular being. But they're not coming to complete you. They're coming to assist you in the revelation that you're already complete. So when you're in their presence, you feel complete. And you recognize your own completeness. And you mirror that back to them. And it becomes a very delicious, juicy, engaging, I don't call it a relationship, I call it that one-ment, you see. Yeah.
It feels like home, and you don't want to. You don't want to.
It's sweet, but it empowers you. You don't just stay there. It empowers you to go into the world with that sense of completeness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Coming from completion, not going towards it.
Right. So there's
Like
soulmates, there's twin flame. All of that, it does exist, but people have to angle at it from the right perception. I am complete in search of the revelation, the insight of my own completeness.